From the Center for Defense Information, senior American military officers retired from active duty, determined to find alternatives to war. America's Defense Monitor. A weekly program on war and peace. How it affects you and people throughout the world. Now, here is your host, the director of the Center for Defense Information, Admiral Gene LaRocque.
Hello, I'm Gene LaRocque, Rear Admiral, United States Navy, retired, director of the Center for Defense Information. Welcome once again to America's Defense Monitor. We here at the Center for Defense Information are very happy to have you do our program. All of us at the Center for Defense Information, and I think all Americans, are very, very proud of the fact that we have an open and free society. We are also very proud of the fact that we are able to determine the course of events in our own country, and for that reason, we want other countries to determine their own future. But a couple of things have happened in the past few years to shake our faith a little bit in the openness of our society. There's a growing force within the United States, a growing movement to try to operate in secret and particularly to influence what is happening in other countries. Now, these actions by some of our intelligence agencies to act secretly in foreign countries, I think, are a corrosive, insidious effect on our own open society, and frankly, it's fair to the other countries of the world. Recently, one of our Military Advisory Council members, Colonel Redinger, and a few of his colleagues got together and decided that they would do what they could to return the United States to an open society, to move away from covert actions. So we've filmed some information that they have been putting out, and I think you're going to find it interesting. After you've seen this program, please drop us a note. Tell us what you think.
We are going to try to expose covert action. We are going to try to get it legally banned.
I've never spoken before publicly. As far as an assassin, yes, I am trained, but I'm a lover, not a killer, and I did not take anyone's life. I was ordered to.
The whole activity of the secret community which carries out covert operation, of course, has been to escape any form of regulation.
20 former CIA agents have not only come in from the cold, they've emerged into the sunlight. At a Washington press conference, these veterans of U.S. covert actions announced formation of a new group to abolish covert action. Among them are men and women who helped overthrow governments in Guatemala and Brazil and tried to assassinate Fidel Castro in Cuba. One of their leaders directed the CIA's secret operation in Angola in the mid-1970s. Another one spent 25 years in the CIA, most of it undercover in Asia. The organization they founded is called the Association for Responsible Dissent. John Stockwell, former task force chief of the CIA operation in Angola, outlines the group's goals.
Hi, I'm John Stockwell. I'm executive director of the Association for Responsible Dissent. I note simply that dissent is an honored tradition in our society. We have the dissenting report of the Iran-Contra study, for example. Every Supreme Court decision has a dissent. There are a body of people in this country who are dissenting from the covert policies. And that's what we're representing here primarily. I note that the majority opinion is not always the correct one. If you look at history, at one time everyone in the Roman Empire was drinking their wine from lead glasses and getting lead poisoning. At one time in Elizabethan England, it was the mode for all the women to put lye on their faces to bleach them whiter, thereby scarring and disfiguring their faces. At one time, everyone pretty much agreed that slavery was the right thing to do. In the early 1960s, there was a great consensus that we should go plunging into a war in Vietnam. That was a tragedy for this country and for the country of Vietnam. And covert actions, there have been 7 presidents since World War II have watched their administrations destroyed utterly or deeply embarrassed and the country discredited by covert actions.
Colonel Philip Rettinger was an active duty Marine when he was recruited by the CIA in the early 1950s. He had earlier told part of his story on America's Defense Monitor and to Bill Moyers on PBS. That was the story of his participation in the overthrow of the Guatemalan government in 1954. Here he discusses why, over 30 years later, he's now outraged by U.S. covert action.
The founders of this organization have all taken part in covert actions of one sort or another. And we know from personal experience how bad covert actions are. They have caused, over the years, from the beginning of the CIA's activity, toil and trouble and murder, destruction, crimes of all types all over the world. My early experience was in the overthrow of the Guatemalan government. Overthrowing that government brought about, over the years, a series of repressive military dictatorships that cost the lives of over 100,000 Guatemalans. Now that is principally why I'm here today and why I've been working on my own for the past 2 years. I live in Mexico, as a matter of fact, and my profession is that of an artist. There's a divided opinion upon whether I'm an artist or not. However, I claim to be an artist. And I have been living comfortably down there since leaving the CIA back in the early 60s. And I've been enjoying life. And I suddenly decided, upon pondering of what we're doing, what the CIA is doing, what our administration is doing, is a distinct crime. It's a criminal action from many standpoints. And I decided a year ago, last February, to go to Nicaragua. I hadn't been there since 1954 when we fled there from Tegucigalpa back in the Somoza days. So I decided to go back down there with the great support of my wife. And I went down on my own to see what's going on in Nicaragua. And I made the terrible mistake of going up into the north, into the combat zone, and into the zone where our wonderful freedom fighters are operating. I arrived up in the settlement, the cooperative of Miraflor, up beyond Esli, shortly after the Contras had attacked that cooperative. They had killed women, children, old people, health center people, and I became so outraged, it was something I could not control. I became so outraged that I went back to Managua and got on a plane, came back to Mexico, kissed my wife, and came to Washington. And people have said, well, you deserve a lot of credit. I don't deserve any credit at all because I had no alternative. I had to do it. I had to do it, and I have dropped most of my profession as an artist to get into this struggle, to try to get some sanity in our public life in the United States. As I say, all of the founders and many of the others, new members of this organization, have taken part in these terrible covert actions over the world. And the deaths that we have caused by these covert actions are up in the millions over the last 30 years or so. I have now practically dropped my art career because this is so important. It's so important for the United States to know what we have been doing in the names of all of our citizens in all these years. I have been on speaking tours to the West, the Southwest, and in my area, down in Texas and so forth. I have found that the people are eager to hear about this. They didn't know anything about it. They've been told so many lies by our administration, and they just haven't been able to, and they still are very doubtful. They say, no, you must be mistaken. You must be mistaken. I said, how can I be mistaken when I took part in these covert actions?
Ilona Maria Lorenz was recruited by the CIA in her native Cuba. She had met Fidel Castro on her father's luxury liner. Ms. Lorenz, who admits to having been Castro's mistress, was trained as an assassin by the CIA. Her trainer was Frank Sturgis of Watergate fame, but she refused twice to carry out her assignment.
But I did not harm Fidel. I did come out with some papers, which articles in the press have said were aerial topographical views of missile sites. They were, in fact, love letters. So it sent me back again. It sent me back again.
Oh, the mind boggles.
With 2 capsules, a uniform, and agents in place in Cuba to do it, with botulinum toxin, 2 capsules to be put into his food or his milkshake or coffee or whatever. That also I did not do. And when I came out, they were even angrier than before. As a result, they threatened me and said, well, we're training. So I became a gun runner. I delivered weapons. I assisted with the training. I was sent to a camp as a soldier. The aborted Bay of Pigs left me saddened because I lost a few friends. After that, they tried again for me to go to Cuba, but I refused.
You're watching America's Defense Monitor, produced by the Center for Defense Information. You were recruited into the CIA in 1959 while you were still in Havana?
Yes, I was.
And how long did you stay in?
On and off till 77.
And your assignment was to assassinate Fidel Castro?
Yes, it was.
You were part of Operation 40? What is it?
It's a super secret group of, I would say, hand-picked covert operatives which answer only to the highest officials in D.C., trained in assassinations. I was the only woman.
Do you have any reason to believe that this is still going on?
I'm out of it. I'm out of it now, but I'm sure there are other groups operating now. I don't know directly if it is, but there's the death squads. People have to question those members. Other than that, I don't know. I'm out of it long ago.
What do you feel about the attempt by the United States government to assassinate foreign leaders and the covert operations in general?
I think it's very wrong to make attempts or to use people or train or to assassinate any leader. I think there's a much better way. As far as covert, I think it is wrong too. It's still going on. I was involved in the 60s. It's still going on. I think it is wrong. I just don't believe in that anymore. I lost a lot of friends. I've been hurt physically. And I just don't agree with it. It takes too many lives. Some of my partners are dead and missing, involved in covert activities.
Do you think that covert operations harm the security interests of the United States?
Yes, I do. Although we need an effective intelligence system, I don't believe in covert activity.
Richard Martinez lives in New Mexico. He was once a local labor union representative. He went to work for an international organization of postal and communications workers. It had ties to the CIA. Martinez helped prepare Brazilian workers to overthrow their government in 1964. Mr. Martinez, you worked for the CIA for several years in the early 1960s in activities in Latin America.
Yes, sir, I sure did. I worked in Brazil in the early 60s organizing for the overthrow of João Goulart, who was a communist. He was a president at the time in Brazil. And I was sent there with the understanding that the thing to do is to organize for 1964 for the coup, to get the coup going, to overthrow the president. I was trained in New York by the CIA. Of course, I represented an organization known as the Postal Telegraph Telephone International, which is an international trade secretariat tied in and controlled, owned, manipulated by the CIA and the American Institute for Free Labor Development, which was at that time run by Bill Doherty. And I don't know if he's still there or not, but he is a man.
Excuse me, are you saying to us that the CIA owns and operates an international labor organization?
Definitely. It's financed by the CIA. Where else do you think they're going? The AFLD is getting their funds. See,
the AIFLD is an operation of the AFL-CIO here in Washington.
Yes, it is. The AIFLD operates through different secretariats. At the time, we had 13, 14 international trade secretariats tied in, and they were actually owned. They were branches of the American Institute for Free Labor Development. And the American Institute for Free Labor Development is infiltrated and manipulated by the CIA.
And what specifically did you have to do?
I had to organize strictly. I would send people, so-called potential leaders from the communication field in Brazil, send them to Front Royal here in Virginia, train them for 3 months, and then send them back brainwashed to the extent that they would go give seminars on behalf of the free and democratic labor movement. The idea was to move people to our side, pull them away from the communists, because we needed numbers. We wanted bigger representation. And the institute here, the American Institute for Free Labor Development, would train them for us, send them back to us. Then the CIA funding through the A field and the CIA, we would provide all necessary money to keep the people given seminars, building up leadership, and picking up bigger membership.
Is there something more involved?
Oh, definitely. Well, the idea is to send the leaders, educate them on the democratic labor movement, send them back to Brazil, already with the understanding that they were going to get financed by us for another year or so, depending on how close we were to 1964. They were supposed to pick up membership and teach them the democratic move, pull them away from the communist labor unions, because at that time, the communists control most of the labor movement. So the idea is to pull them on our side and have numbers, which meant a lot before we started the revolution. We wanted more people on our side.
But did they know they were going back into a revolution?
The leadership from local Brazilians? Oh, sure. They already understood that there was going to be a revolution. Once they left the Front Royal here, they already understood that they were there to work for us.
And did they participate in the overthrow of Goulart?
Oh, definitely, sure. Most of my people that worked for me participated. In fact, the day of the revolution, I had a closet full of machine guns, all kinds of guns, and we're looking at a building of the communist students. And I told them, well, why don't you get your machines and everything and burn the building down across the street. Didn't take about half an hour. They had the whole building down.
So you're telling us that the CIA engineered the overthrow of the elected president of Brazil in 1964?
Definitely. It was the CIA that did it all. It did exactly later on, after we left Brazil, after we won the revolution. We actually didn't win anything. Because what the hell, they came back and the military took over, and it turned out that we actually hadn't won anything. And as it turned out later, after I was made the controller of all the Latin American countries out of Lima, Peru, I decided to quit them. And they wouldn't let me quit. Hell, they'd go to my house, harass the heck out of me until I consented to making one more trip for them, which was to make a study in the Dominican Republic. There, when I got to the Dominican Republic, I found the same people that worked for me in Brazil were now sitting in the Dominican Republic, and they were CIA agents, and they were the ones that were instrumental in assassinating Trujillo, the dictator at that time.
Did you try to leave the CIA with regret for what you had done in Brazil?
Definitely. Well, after, see, they wanted to train my wife to also join the agency. And I said, no. It's bad enough that I'm doing what I'm doing. And it started opening my eyes to the fact, what the heck am I doing here? All I'm doing is people getting killed unnecessarily for no reason at all. What the heck am I doing? I'm not about to stay with it. So I changed. As soon as I became controller of all Latin American countries, told my wife and said, let's go back to New Mexico and see what's happening over there. I'm going to have to quit this. And at that time, they were already pushing me into my wife being sent to New York and being trained too. That's the way they were.
She never did?
No. That's when I quit them. And then, but still, they kept me on the payroll, hoping that eventually I might change my mind. So they sent me to the Dominican Republic later on, and I stayed there a month, and I took off and left and never went back with them.
David McMichael, who served as a CIA analyst on Central America, sums up the case against covert action.
These covert operations usually involve direct, although secret, use of U.S. personnel or foreign personnel acting at the direction and with the support of U.S. intelligence agencies, armed services, or other executive branch offices without the knowledge or approval of the people of the United States or their elected representatives as provided for in the Constitution of the United States, and are therefore violative of the spirit of the Constitution and subversive of it. These covert operations frequently involve the use of armed forces against the governments of countries with which the U.S. is at peace, and are therefore in violation of United States commitments under the United Nations Charter and customary international law. And since these covert operations often result in death, injury, impoverishment, and misery for large numbers of innocent people, they are therefore violative of international standards of human rights and the moral principles and ethics proclaimed by the Government of the United States, which underlie our Constitution and are the approved values of the people of the United States. Contrary to this, the history of the past 40 years demonstrates that a usual result of these operations are unnecessary and costly war and defeat, as in Vietnam, creation of threats to world peace, and provoke the danger of nuclear conflict, as in the case of Cuba during the missile crisis of '62, embarrassment and loss of international good repute, as revelations of the Church Committee demonstrated over 10 years ago, diplomatic isolation and the weakening of traditional alliances and international relationships, conduct of covert operations results in the establishment and use of illegal propaganda offices in the United States government, whose purpose and activity is to lie to and deceive the people of the United States about the nature and conduct of covert operations. Therefore, we do believe, and this is our purpose, that the maintenance of a capability for covert operations, that is, clandestine activities involving the direct or proxy use of the United States Armed Force against the government or any segment of the people of a nation with which the United States is at peace, and the domestic consequences thereof, as we have just described. The use of that capability by the government of the United States should be denounced and abandoned as an instrument of policy by our country. And we understand that such denunciation and abandonment does not mean that the government of the United States will not continue to use secret means, both technical and human, for the collection and analysis of information in the interest of and for the purpose of the defense of the United States and its allies.
This is not the first group to seek limits on covert action. Ralph McGehee, a 25-year CIA veteran, tells of earlier official efforts.
And the Church Committee recommended that covert operations be severely restricted and that the CIA become basically an intelligence agency. I served in the agency for 25 years, and my conclusions are that it uses its intelligence universally to support covert operations. You can imagine what would happen to a CIA officer in Nicaragua who started reporting that the Sandinistas are the best thing for the Nicaraguans. He wouldn't last very long. And that's how my own problems with the agency began, trying to report the truth about Vietnam. Well, I mentioned the Church Committee report. The Pike Committee report of the mid-'70s, the House of Representatives Committee report, came up to similar conclusions that covert operations were destructive for America's interests. The David Bruce Committee under the Eisenhower administration said, we recommend the cessation of most covert operations because they're destructive to America's public interest. You had George Bundy, who was the chief national security advisor under both the Johnson and Kennedy administrations, talking about how destructive covert operations were for America's own interests, not foreign people, but America's own interests. And Admiral Inman recently said similar things. So when we talk about the necessity to stop covert operations, we're talking about defending not only the people of the world, but the interests of the American people. Thank you.
This group of former covert agents, however, may be the first to work for an end to all covert action. Since the press conference, other former CIA agents from around the country have contacted the Association for Responsible Dissent. They, too, want to emerge into the sunlight.
Well, I hope you learned as much as I did from just watching the former CIA agents discussing their exploits. I must say that I was pretty incensed when I learned of all the things that the CIA in its covert action had been trying to do around the world. I was incensed and I was surprised, in fact, distressed. On the other hand, I was very much encouraged to see these former CIA agents, these patriotic Americans, banding together to change the course of direction of our nation in these covert actions to one of more openness. We want to help the other countries of the world.